approach roles and the rehearsal process in very different ways.
Right.
And then having said that, I think, and Billy can really speak to this because he really is teaching graduate actors about the process. So he's very specifically involved in the very thing that you're asking us to talk about. But I would say, for starters, it's a very interesting combination of being very prepared for a role, which means really having spent time reading the play over and over again. If there is research to be done, that actors do that, that they have really spent time thinking about what's going on in the play, what they want, all of those things before they even arrive at the first rehearsal. So that it's a combination of both preparation and work that needs to be ongoing throughout the rehearsal process. I'm speaking in very general terms.
Right.
And also being very open to whatever may happen first at the table, then up on their feet between them and the other actors in tandem with the director.
So it's a challenge sometimes, it seems to me, like having done all of that preparatory work and feeling like you have some ideas about what you might like to work on before you ever even jump into the rehearsal, and not being already kind of rooted into this,
So true.
Yeah.
Ideas, I think, is the operative word, that you come full of questions. That's the most valuable thing.
Right.
That I, as a director, can hope an actor will bring to rehearsals.
I think the especially for people who are really finding their process, the big thing is not to start acting too soon. And that's when people, the preparation isn't about preparing to act. It's about preparing to discover the play with other people. And not to, and so, I always say that the process, the rehearsal process is the steady debunking of preconceptions. Because you always come to a role with preconceptions about what you think it is. And then if you're not open to that, to the rehearsal, to really exploring it in the rehearsal process, you want to discover that it ain't so, that it's something else. It's something you didn't think of when you were alone reading the play. Right. That it's something you discover with talking to the person who's playing the other character. And I think the actors that excite me are the ones who are able to start talking right away. And you can do that. They don't start acting, they start talking. And they don't worry about the result.
Right.
And that's why I think the trap is, and this is not easy to do, because you come to the rehearsal process with a big obligation to prove yourself, to say, I'm legitimate, I can play this role. But can you, given all that pressure, can you start from actually a very simple place of really talking to the other human being? Right. I mean, probably the thing I think of most often is, there were two things Uta Hagen said. One is, she said, every time you start a play or a role, you feel like you have to learn to act all over again. And I think you have to accept that and actually embrace it, because in that lies the truth of what you're looking for. The other thing is, many people can act. It's very hard to be a human being on stage. And that's the goal. And to do that, you've got to start from a very human, vulnerable, place where you're not proving yourself, you're not doing it. Right. You're discovering it, and you're seeing where you can go. And those, so I think the actors who excite, I think, Pam and myself, are the people who are willing to flounder, right? Who are willing to say, God, I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
What am I doing?
That's much more helpful than the I already know.
Right. I already know.
Yeah.
So exactly. Important.
Yeah.
And yet also very important that actors accept the responsibility of going home and doing homework. i.e., whatever has happened in the rehearsal, that day, to go home, to look at the script, to process it, just as we as directors do. We
Right.
do the same thing.
Right.
You know, I'll go home and in thinking about what's happened that day in rehearsal, and again, having been surprised by things that I had not anticipated,
Right.
allowing that to layer into whatever is going to come up next the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing we say over and over again to young actors, to students, is it's not enough to show up and learn your lines. It's going home and learning your lines is not homework.
No, that's the very lowest common denominator.
That's the lowest common denominator.
Yeah.
So, you know, really going home, processing.
And it's not really the work of the actor in a way, you know. In some ways, I mean, anyone can memorize something.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. But then coming back in the next day with more questions and saying, can I try this? I have an idea.
Right.
And really knowing that their right and responsibility is to make active choices. And the rehearsal process is as much about failing as it is, I mean, that's how we discover what works, quite often by what doesn't work. And we all have to be willing to plunge in. And it's important for me as a director also to say to the actors over and over again, oh, sorry guys, my mistake. Okay, but we discovered this is what doesn't work, but as a result, let's try this. That's what the process is. And it's by necessity, it's a messy process. And everyone needs to know that. And there's a great freedom in that once you say, we don't know.
And so we're in some ways describing also a perfect world, because there's also the aspect of being in a situation where perhaps you're with a director who's really not going to give you a lot of feedback, or perhaps is maybe giving feedback that you innately don't necessarily trust. What do you do? I mean, how do you deal with that situation if you're, trying to...
I think that's what you learn, you have to learn as an actor, is one, you have to learn to own your own process and be secure in what you need to do for yourself to get there. And then you have to be willing to negotiate that with the director. And I use the word negotiate because it's going to involve compromise. And you have to, rather than having a fit because it's not your way, you have to be able to say, yeah, but, I really feel I need to know what I'm doing here before I really try to act this scene.
I so value the communication from an actor, just coming, just keeping that dialogue going. It's the actors that tend sometimes where the conversation stops,
I haven't met these directors who don't listen to actors, who don't, who an actor truly says from themselves, this is what I need to do, say absolutely not, do it my way. I really think that's a rare exception. I think, and people can...
I have seen directors though that tend to, that tend to let actors, give actors an enormous amount of freedom and aren't particularly, they're wonderful, and there's some wonderful directors that work this way, but they're not necessarily going to, they're allowing you to do that processing, that work.
They're not,
they're allowing you to do that yourself,
Right.
and they're trusting you to do it.
but it is, as you said, I think it's so important for actors to say, I don't understand, I'm lost here, help me,
What's going on?
I disagree,
Yeah,
can I try this instead?
yeah, I love Can I Try This?
And sometimes to say, as many years as I've been directing, sometimes I don't know. An actor just recently said to me, that's going to be valuable to me next week. I'm not ready to hear that. And I say, thank you. I hear you. I honor it. I'll step back. Because the process is about layering in, and sometimes, as much as we or try to be as sensitive as possible to gauging what to introduce next.
Right.
We're human.
No.
Sometimes I'll jump to something that the actor isn't ready. And if the actor is aware of that and can say, I'm not ready for that yet, I appreciate it. They need to know that they have that right and that power.
Right.
That's part of our working process together. It should
Conversation
be.
that's going on.